Hey everybody, it's Miss Rice. We're trying to continue on with our nutrition recipes and healthy meals. And today I'm going to show you how to make a veggie frittata, which is a baked egg dish. And I'm going to actually do it in the oven today. So before I do that, I am kind of going to go through some safety things with using the oven and the stove. And so the first one is have parent permission and supervision. For this particular recipe, I'm going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees. You could have it a little bit higher temperature. Every oven kind of cooks a little bit differently, so that should be something that you kind of work with your parents or guardians on. And have oven mitts and gloves kind of ready to kind of deal and handle with hot items. Don't ever leave the oven unattended. You don't have to be right next to it, but you always should stay kind of nearby while you are cooking and baking. Make sure that your baking rack inside the oven is in the center. You want to grease or coat a baking dish of any kind with butter or olive oil. This prevents the eggs from sticking. You can use glass, you can use an aluminum pan, and you can also get those tin foil pans at the grocery store too to make this. It's optional to have pre-cooked vegetables or meats that are cooled and set to the side in advance. So I actually have some cooked broccoli, and I have some cooked onions and mushrooms ready to go. And I also kind of have my eggs ready to go too, but you can have things like sausage or bacon that have already been pre-cooked. You can have some cheese, that's optional, kind of sliced or grated off to the side, ready to go, and that's kind of usually goes on top. I've had some people put it inside the egg dish as well while it goes into the oven. And either have a cooling rack or extra hot pads or pot holders available when you are ready to pull it out of the oven. And the directions are, once your oven is preheated at the desired baking temperature, you're going to whisk, mix with a fork, 1 dozen eggs into a bowl to mix the yolks and egg whites, and I'll demonstrate that shortly. You're going to put your veggie and meat mixture into the greased baking dish, pour the egg mixture over the veggies into a baking dish, and then using the oven mitt or pot holder, you're going to put the dish into the baking rack, and you will bake it for approximately 45 minutes. It might take a little bit longer or a little bit shorter to make sure that it's done. And then obviously once the frittata is done, you are going to turn off the oven and let the frittata cool off to the side. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and get on with making this. So again, my oven is preheated. I am going to, in my kind of greased baking dish with a little bit of butter, I'm going to dump this in. There's the onions and mushrooms and some broccoli. And I'm big on veggies, so I like to have lots of veggies in mine. And the whisking part is, I've already kind of whisked this a little bit, but you're just kind of stirring the eggs together, the eggs and egg yolks. And how much you whisk it is kind of up to you, but I think it's a good idea to whisk the yolks and whites together. So I'm going to kind of pour this in, and you can kind of flatten it out and stir everything kind of in together. That's fine. And once you've got that all out, you can kind of set it off to the side. And the outside of the oven isn't hot, so to kind of grab the handle, but it's a good idea to have an oven mitt on, and when you grab your dish, to put it inside the oven. And again, I'm putting it inside on the center baking rack. There's usually 2 in an oven, and you can just always adjust them. And we're going to let that cook for about 45 minutes, and I will be back in a little bit to see how it looks. All right, I'm back, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull the frittata out of the oven and put the cheese on, and then put it back in the oven for maybe about the last 5 or so minutes. But one thing I am going to do is do a quick test with a thin knife to maybe see where it's at with its cooking. And it's not quite coming out clean, so it really wouldn't have any kind of gooey egg material on it. And this looks like it probably needs about another 10 minutes. So that was kind of in that little checklist of how to cook it, or how to gauge that it was done. But with this, just gonna kind of put the cheese on. Be careful not to touch the pan kind of in any way. The cheese will definitely kind of spread around and melt. And you can also certainly use like a wooden spoon or something like that if you wanted to cover your frittata a little bit more. So if I grabbed maybe a nearby wooden spoon without touching the pan, obviously, because it's hot and trying to be safe, this is a way that you can kind of do that. And so based on the time, I'm going to give it maybe another 10 minutes. I put as you maybe could see, I put the baked egg dish on a hot pad, and the stovetop is cool, but it's the inside that's hot, right? So I'm going to open up the door all the way. I'm going to grab it with 2 kind of hot pads and put it back in for maybe another 10 minutes. And then we'll see how it turns out. All right, so pretty confident that it's done. Again, I got my oven mitt. I've got my spot for it to cool on. I'm gonna pull out the frittata, and there's my timer. And so I'm gonna kind of hit the clear button on that, and just doing that even just turns off the oven. So I've already kind of taken care of that. And so we have our frittata baked with cheese. So there is eggs, broccoli, mushrooms, onions, and cheese put on top. I used a dozen eggs. I didn't mention that earlier, but I did use a dozen eggs. And we're gonna let this cool, I would say, for at least 15 minutes. The pan even might still be on the warm side, so just be really careful when you do try and touch it. Always have these handy. And just gonna kind of quickly go back to our slides. So I've turned off the oven, I've pulled it out with the oven mitt, and letting it cool. I say 5 to 10 minutes, but at least 10, if not 15. And then you're just going to cut it up into squares, and it's great to have as a meal or kind of as like a protein side. So you could have like salad or like breakfast potatoes that are cooked up, things like that. But lots of nutrition in a frittata. You have protein from the eggs and from the cheese too. You have healthy fats from the eggs and the cheese. And the eggs have a little bit of cholesterol, but our bodies actually need some cholesterol. And then the veggies provide vitamins and minerals. So appreciate you guys hanging out. Let me cook this for you. Great to see you, and take care. Thanks.